These are your secret twins, Alessandro. Naomi Carter's voice cut through the elegant murmur of Manhattan's most exclusive charity gala, like shattered glass. 2,000 of New York's elite froze mid-conversation, champagne flutes suspended in manicured hands as she stormed across the marble stage of the Metropolitan Museum's Great Hall. The woman commanding their attention blazed with fury, her dark skin glowing under crystal chandeliers, her fierce eyes locked on one man seated at the head table. In her arms, she carried 2-year-old twins, Kemi, whose curious eyes mirrored her mother's defiance, and Taiwo, clutching a worn teddy bear with tiny fists. But it was the blood-stained ledger she brandished like a weapon that made security guards reach for their radios. I escaped the death you and my father planned. Naomi's voice cracked with raw emotion as she ripped her silk sleeve, revealing a jagged scar that snaked from her wrist to her elbow, white against her brown skin, thick as a rope, ugly as truth. Alessandro Moretti rose from his chair with predatory grace. 6'2" of tailored menace, his Korean-Italian features carved from marble and shadow. His black eyes, the kind that could seduce or sentence, blazed as they fixed on the children she held. My heirs, he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who owned half of Brooklyn's docks. My blood. The words detonated through the crowd like a dropped bomb. Phones appeared instantly, recording everything. Within seconds, #Mafia Twins reveal would explode across social media. Alessandro stepped forward, his movements fluid despite the tension crackling through the air. Touch them, and my empire burns you alive. Naomi laughed, a sound like breaking bells. Your empire? I have your father's ledger, Alessandro. Every dirty deal. Every trafficking route. Every politician he bought. She held up the blood-stained book, its leather cover scarred and torn. Including the one where he paid you to kill me. The accusation hit the crowd like a physical blow. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Camera flashes exploded, turning the scene into a lightning storm of documenting scandal. Security guards moved toward the stage, but Alessandro raised one hand, a gesture that stopped them cold. His authority in this room was absolute, even as his world crumbled publicly. You're supposed to be dead, he whispered, loud enough for the front tables to hear. I was. For 2 years, I've been dead. Naomi's voice carried across the silent hall. While you and Chief Carter collected my trust fund and planned to marry me off like livestock. She shifted Kemi higher on her hip, the little girl's wide eyes taking in the sea of staring faces with unnatural calm. But dead women don't give birth to twins. Dead women don't discover they're pregnant with triplets. The revelation sent another shockwave through the crowd. Triplets. 5 children total. Alessandro's face went white beneath his olive complexion. That's impossible, he breathed. 3 heartbeats on an ultrasound don't lie. Naomi's hand moved protectively to her still flat stomach. From our last night in Milan, before you decided I was expendable. 2 years ago, Milan had been their secret paradise. Alessandro remembered every detail with painful clarity, how Naomi sketched portraits of strangers in Brera's art galleries while he whispered Korean poetry in her ear, how she challenged his worldview over wine and pasta, how she made him forget he was a monster for stolen hours that felt like lifetimes. He'd been investigating her father's operations, using their relationship as cover. But somewhere between watching her laugh at his terrible Italian jokes and feeling her trace the scars on his chest with gentle fingers, the mission had become secondary to something far more dangerous. Love. The kind of love that made kings abdicate and empires crumble. She's not just a pawn, he'd whisper during that final phone call with Chief Carter, his voice hoarse with conflict. But Carter had insisted. Naomi knew too much, had seen too much. The car accident would be clean. Quick. Merciful. Alessandro had agreed because he was weak, because he was terrified of losing her to his enemies if she stayed alive, because he thought a quick death was kinder than a slow one in his world. He'd been wrong about everything. You overheard the conversation, he said now, realization dawning. That night at the safe house. Your men called me a pawn in your Mafia deal. Naomi confirmed, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. So I ran. Straight into Daddy's arms, pregnant and stupid enough to think blood meant safety. Chief Carter, her father, her destroyer, had welcomed her home with false comfort and genuine cruelty. Within hours, she'd found herself locked in the Chicago mansion's East Wing, windows barred, doors monitored, while Carter negotiated her marriage to settle his gambling debts with the Kozlov family. You locked me away like a prize heifer, she continued, her words carrying to every corner of the Great Hall. Until I got desperate enough to steal Marcus's guard keys and run. The staged car accident had been Carter's masterpiece of cruel efficiency. A rainy night on Lakeshore Drive. A truck that ran the red light perfectly on cue. The impact that sent her sedan spinning into the concrete barrier with mathematical precision. She'd awakened in the hospital to Carter's tearful performance, playing the grieving father while doctors discussed her injuries in hushed tones. The scar on her arm came from glass and twisted metal, but the real damage had been invisible, the betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. I made you disappear in that crash, Carter had whispered during one of his bedside visits, believing she was unconscious from painkillers. Officially dead. Trust fund transferred. Clean slate. But Naomi had allies Carter didn't know about. Hospital staff who remember her charity work, underground networks that helped women disappear, people who believed in second chances even for Mafia princesses. Faking her death had been surprisingly simple once the right people were motivated to help. I should have stayed hidden forever, Naomi said now, her voice carrying a weight that made the crowd lean forward. But when you're protecting 5 lives instead of 3, silence becomes impossible. She looked directly into the nearest camera, her expression fierce with protective determination. Before I tell you how this moment destroyed everything we built, you need to understand, some secrets are too dangerous to keep buried. Subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about family, love, and the lengths a mother will go to protect her children. Alessandro's security team surrounded the stage now, but their boss made no move to apprehend her. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a register only she could hear. Why now? Why here? Because they found us yesterday. Naomi's calm facade cracked slightly. Carter's men. In Boston. They know about the twins, and now they know about the triplets. Fear flickered across Alessandro's features. Not for himself, but for the children she held. How many men? Enough. She clutched the ledger tighter. This is my insurance policy. Every trafficking route your families use. Every political contact. Every dirty deal going back 15 years. I memorized every page. The crowd watched this intimate exchange with breathless fascination, phones recording every word, every gesture. By morning, the footage would be viral across 6 continents. You can't run forever, Alessandro said. Not with 3 children. Not with triplets coming. Watch me. Naomi backed toward the stage's side exit, where Marcus, her father's former head of security, now her unlikely ally, waited with a stolen van. I've been running for 2 years. I've gotten good at it. But even as she spoke the defiant words, exhaustion pulled at her features. The pregnancy was taking its toll, and the stress of constant flight was wearing her down. She'd fainted twice this week, saved only by Marcus's quick reflexes and the kindness of strangers. Alessandro saw her weakness, recognized the dangerous game she was playing. Let me protect them. Let me protect you. Like you protected me before? The bitterness in her voice could have stripped paint. When you paid my father to stage my death? I was trying to save me? Naomi laughed harshly. By making me disappear? By making sure I'd never be safe anywhere in the world. Security guards moved closer, but Alessandro waved them back again. Whatever was happening between him and this woman, it was personal, intimate, dangerous in ways that went beyond physical threat. Your children need their father, he said. My children need to stay alive. Naomi reached the stage's edge, where Marcus waited with military precision. And that means staying away from you. She kissed each twin's forehead, whispering something in their ears that made them nod solemnly. Then she looked back at Alessandro one final time. If you want to protect them, stay out of our way. The words hit like a slap. Around them, the crowd stirred restlessly. Security guards spoke into radios, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Police or ambulance, impossible to tell. Alessandro watched her leave with the helpless fury of a man who'd spent his life controlling everything and everyone, only to find himself powerless against a woman carrying his legacy in her arms and his future in her womb. As Naomi disappeared into the night with Marcus and the twins, one thought echoed through his mind with terrifying clarity. This was far from over. In the van speeding through Manhattan's neon-lit streets, Naomi held her children close and whispered the same words she'd repeated every night for 2 years. "We'll outrun them all." But for the first time since her resurrection from that staged death, she wasn't sure she believed it. "Keep moving. Don't look back." Marcus guided Naomi through Chicago's bustling Millennium Park, the twins strapped to her chest in a double carrier while she sketched tourists with swift, practiced strokes. 3 weeks since the Gala explosion, and they'd become ghosts, drifting from city to city, surviving on cash and careful anonymity. The street art paid enough for motel rooms and formula. Naomi's fingers flew across cheap sketchpads, capturing faces in charcoal, while Kemi and Taiwo watched with unusual patience. They'd learned silence during these long days, sensing their mother's constant vigilance. "Mama tired," Kemi whispered, her small hand touching Naomi's pale cheek. Naomi forced a smile, though exhaustion pulled at every muscle. The pregnancy was hitting harder this time. Nausea that lasted all day, dizzy spells that made her grip park benches like lifelines. At 14 weeks with triplets, her body was already betraying the careful control she needed to survive. "Just finishing this one, baby girl." But as she added final shadows to an elderly man's portrait, her vision blurred. The charcoal slipped from suddenly numb fingers. "Lady, you okay?" The hot dog vendor, who'd been watching her work, rushed over as Naomi swayed. She grabbed his cart for support, black spots dancing across her sight. "I'm fine," she gasped, but her knees buckled. "No, you're not." The vendor, Miguel, according to his name tag, steadied her with calloused hands.
"Sit down. Now."
As he helped her to a nearby bench, his voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "You need to go.
Soon.
Men in suits been asking about you since yesterday." Showed pictures. Fear cut through Naomi's dizziness like ice water. "How many men?"
4.
"Maybe 5. Miguel glanced around nervously. "Professional types. The kind that make people disappear." Marcus materialized beside them, his military training evident in how quickly he assessed the threat. "We leave now." Within minutes, they were walking briskly toward the parking garage where their latest stolen vehicle waited. Naomi clutched the twins tighter, her mind racing through contingency plans while her body demanded rest she couldn't afford. "He's getting closer," she murmured. "Carter or Moretti?" Marcus asked. "Does it matter?" 2,000 miles away in his Brooklyn penthouse, Alessandro stared at security footage from Chicago's financial district. His tech specialist had finally caught a glimpse of Naomi's distinctive profile entering a bank 3 days ago. "She's smart," admitted Jean, his Korean-American lieutenant who'd been tracking her digital footprints. "Using different names, paying cash, staying off cameras. But she's pregnant and traveling with twins. That makes her vulnerable." Alessandro's jaw tightened. He'd spent 3 weeks mobilizing resources across 12 states, following ghost trails and dead ends while Naomi disappeared into America's vast underground network of people who didn't officially exist. "The honor code demands we protect our bloodline," said Hiroshi, his elderly advisor whose Korean traditions had guided the family through 3 generations of American crime. 5 children carry your legacy. They must be secured." "She doesn't trust me," Alessandro replied, still studying the grainy footage. "Trust is earned through actions, not words," Hiroshi said quietly. "What actions will you choose?" Alessandro's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from his Boston contact. Asterisk found them. "Safe house in Back Bay. Do we move?" Asterisk. He stared at the text for long moments, remembering Naomi's accusation at the gala. She wasn't wrong. He had paid for her staged death, believing it was mercy compared to what Carter's enemies would do to her. But mercy built on lies had nearly cost him everything that mattered. Track only. No contact. I'm coming personally. The Boston safe house occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse, accessible only through a maze of security doors and hidden cameras. Naomi had chosen it specifically for the multiple escape routes and the Korean family who owned the building, people who understood the value of silence. She sat cross-legged on the apartment's wooden floor, the twins napping on blankets, while she studied Carter's blood-stained ledger for the 100th time. Every page represented lives destroyed, families torn apart, children sold like commodities. Her father's empire stretched from Chicago to Miami, built on human misery and political corruption. Names of senators, judges, police commissioners filled the margins alongside shipping manifests and bank account numbers. This could destroy half of Washington, she whispered. The ledger's weight had nothing to do with its physical mass. Each entry represented leverage, but also painted a target on her children's backs that grew larger every day she remained alive to use it. Rain began pattering against the warehouse windows as Naomi felt the familiar flutter of movement in her abdomen. Triplets, barely 16 weeks along but already making their presence known with increasing urgency. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the south window.
Now.
Adrenaline flooded her system as she crept to the indicated window and peered through the blinds. 3 floors below, a familiar figure stood in the alley's shadows, his distinctive silhouette unmistakable even in the dim streetlight. Alessandro. He looked up, somehow sensing her gaze, and their eyes met across the distance. Even from this height, she could see the intensity in his expression, not the cold calculation of a predator, but something far more complex. Her phone buzzed again. I need to talk.
Alone.
5 minutes. Naomi's finger hovered over the delete button. Every survival instinct screamed danger, but curiosity won. She texted back. How did you find us? You used your real fingerprint at the bank.
Sloppy.
Despite everything, she almost smiled. He wasn't wrong. 2 minutes. Rooftop access. Come armed, and my people shoot first. I'm always armed. Your people already know I'm here. 20 minutes later, Naomi stepped onto the rain-slicked roof, leaving Marcus with strict instructions to evacuate the twins at the first sign of trouble. Alessandro waited by the building's edge, his expensive coat darkened by moisture. You look terrible, he said without preamble. Pregnancy and constant fear will do that. She kept 10 feet between them, her hand resting on the Glock Marcus had insisted she carry. Why are you here? Carter's mobilizing. Full resources. He knows about the triplets. The words hit like physical blows.
How?
Hospital records in Chicago. Someone in your network got sloppy. Alessandro stepped closer, ignoring the weapon pointed at his chest. He's offering $50 million to my rivals for delivery of all 5 children. Alive. And you're here to collect? I'm here because those children are mine. His voice carried absolute conviction. Korean tradition demands I protect my bloodline. Italian honor demands I correct my mistakes. Your mistake was trying to kill me. My mistake was thinking I could protect you by making you disappear. Alessandro's composure cracked slightly. I underestimated your father's brutality. I underestimated my own feelings. I underestimated you. Rain fell harder, turning their conversation into something intimate despite the distance and drawn weapon between them. Water dripped from Alessandro's dark hair as he continued. I've spent 2 years regretting that phone call. 2 years wondering if you were really dead or if you'd somehow escaped. 2 years hoping you'd survived and hating myself for hoping. Pretty words don't erase attempted murder.
No.
But actions might. He pulled out his phone, showing her a text thread with timestamps from the past hour. I called off the tracking. Told my people to stop looking. This conversation stays between us. Naomi studied his face for deception and found only exhaustion that matched her own. What do you want? I want to know my children. I want to keep them safe. I want to earn forgiveness I probably don't deserve. Alessandro's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I want to fix what I broke. Some things can't be fixed. Maybe not. But I have to try. Before Naomi could respond, her phone exploded with alerts. Marcus's voice crackled through the earpiece. Multiple vehicles approaching. Military formation. We need to go.
Now.
Alessandro was already moving, his weapon appearing with fluid precision. How many? 6 cars. Professional formation. Marcus's training showed in his calm delivery of catastrophic news. Carter's people. Roof access. Alessandro asked. North side. Fire escape to the parking garage. They ran across the slick rooftop, their temporary truce born of mutual desperation. Behind them, the stairwell door exploded inward as armed men flooded the building. The twins, Naomi gasped, pregnancy slowing her down. Marcus has them. Keep moving. Alessandro grabbed her arm as she stumbled, his grip steady and sure. Whatever else lay between them, he wouldn't let her fall. They reached the fire escape as gunshots echoed from inside the building. Marcus appeared in the alley below, the twins strapped to his chest, gesturing urgently toward their escape vehicle. Go, Alessandro said, helping Naomi onto the ladder. What about you? Buying time. He turned back toward their pursuers, his expression shifting into something coldly professional. Get my children out of here. Naomi climbed down as fast as her pregnant body allowed, every rung a small victory against the chaos above. Behind her, Alessandro's voice carried with quiet authority. Gentlemen, I believe you're trespassing. Gunfire erupted across the rooftop. She dropped the final 8 feet to the alley, Marcus catching her with practiced ease. The twins were wide-eyed but quiet, their unusual calm in crisis situations both heartbreaking and necessary. Cars around the corner, Marcus said. Move. As they ran, Naomi heard the distinctive crack of Alessandro's pistol, controlled, precise shots from someone who'd been killing professionally for years. Whatever else he wasn't abandoning them to face Carter's men alone. They reached the stolen sedan as sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus started the engine while Naomi secured the twins in their car seats, her hands shaking from adrenaline and pregnancy hormones. Where to? Marcus asked.
South.
Florida. Somewhere with crowds and sunshine and places to disappear. As they pulled away from the warehouse, Naomi looked back to see Alessandro descending the fire escape, his coat torn and bloodied but his movement steady. He'd survived whatever confrontation had played out on that rooftop. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. They won't follow tonight. But this isn't over. Carter's escalating. Watch for the next move. She deleted the message without responding, but couldn't shake the image of Alessandro's face when she'd mentioned the triplets. For just a moment, his carefully controlled mask had slipped, revealing something that looked almost like wonder. 5 children. His legacy walking around in the world, vulnerable and hunted. Another text arrived as they merged onto I-95, traditional Korean lullaby attached. For Kemi, she seemed to like music. Against every rational thought, Naomi played the audio file. Alessandro's voice filled the car, singing something soft and melodic in a language she didn't understand. In the back seat, Kemi stirred and smiled in her sleep. Naomi deleted that message too, but the melody lingered. 6 hours later, parked at a rest stop outside Baltimore, her phone rang with a call from a Chicago number she recognized. Hello, sweetheart. Carter's voice sent ice through her veins. She'd spent 2 years avoiding this moment, but the ledger had always been insurance, not a permanent solution. Daddy. The word tasted like poison. That was quite a performance in New York. Very theatrical. Very you. I learned from the best. Carter chuckled, a sound like grinding glass. Indeed you did. Though I'm disappointed you chose to embarrass the family publicly. We could have handled this privately. Like you handled a car accident privately? That was a mercy, sweetheart. Compared to what's coming if you don't return my property. Naomi's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, where 3 tiny lives grew despite everything trying to destroy them. The children aren't property. 5 heirs to Alessandro's empire? They're worth more than property. They're currency. The casual cruelty in his voice, referring to her children as economic assets, reinforced every decision she'd made to run from him. "I have your ledger," she reminded him. "And I have resources you can't imagine. 50 million buys a lot of motivated professionals, sweetheart. How long can you run while carrying 3 more children?" The question hit its intended target. Naomi was already struggling with twins and early pregnancy symptoms. Adding the physical demands of late pregnancy and 3 newborns made successful escape nearly impossible. "Your move," Carter continued. "But choose quickly. The price on their heads goes up every day, and I won't be the highest bidder much longer." The line went dead. In the rest stop's fluorescent lighting, Naomi stared at her reflection in the car window. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Stress had carved new lines around her mouth, and her body was already changing in ways that would make hiding increasingly difficult. "Problem?" Marcus asked quietly. "The beginning of the end," she whispered. As if summoned by her despair, another text arrived from Alessandro. "Asterisk Carter called you. I can see it in your posture from here. Asterisk." She spun around, scanning the rest stop's parking lot, but saw only long-haul truckers and families with screaming children. "Where are you?" "Close enough to help. Far enough to respect your space.
For now.
Stop following us."
Can't do that.
Not with 5 lives at stake. Naomi wanted to throw the phone, but pragmatism won over emotion. Like it or not, Alessandro might be the only person with enough resources to protect her children from Carter's escalating threats. "What do you propose?" "Alliance.
Temporary.
Long enough to neutralize your father and secure our children." "Our children." The possessive phrase shouldn't have sent warmth through her chest, but it did. For 2 years, she'd carried the burden of protection alone. Having someone else claim responsibility, even someone she couldn't fully trust, offered relief she hadn't expected. "Miami. Tomorrow. I choose the meeting location." "Agreed. Bring the ledger." "I'm not stupid."
No.
"You're pregnant, exhausted, and running out of options. But not stupid. Never that." Despite everything, the betrayal, the staged death, the weeks of pursuit, Alessandro's acknowledgement of her intelligence felt like vindication. He saw her as more than a vessel for his heirs or a pawn in his power games. He saw her as an equal. The thought was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with bullets or kidnapping attempts. As Marcus drove through the night toward Florida, Naomi dozed fitfully while the twins slept peacefully in their car seats. In her dreams, Korean lullabies mixed with the sound of gunfire, and a man with Alessandro's face kept reaching for children who disappeared like smoke. She woke to Marcus shaking her gently as dawn painted the Miami skyline in shades of pink and gold. "We're here," he said. But so was the black sedan that had followed them for the last 50 miles, keeping precise distance like a professional shadow. Alessandro had kept his word about not interfering, but he'd never promised to let them out of his sight. "Mama," Kemi said sleepily from the back seat. "The scary man isn't scary anymore." Naomi looked back at her daughter's innocent face. "What do you mean, baby girl?" "In my dreams. He was singing to us." Before Naomi could process the implications of her 2-year-old's eerily perceptive statement, her phone rang with a call that made her blood freeze. The caller ID showed only a Chicago number, but this time it wasn't Carter. "Is this Naomi Carter? Who wants to know?" "Dr. Sarah Chun from Northwestern Memorial. I treated you after your accident 2 years ago." The woman's voice carried professional concern mixed with personal urgency. "You need to know, your medical records were accessed yesterday by someone claiming to be family. They specifically requested information about your pregnancy history." "What kind of information?" "Everything. Prenatal care, ultrasounds, due date calculations." "I'm calling because the request came with credentials that looked official, but felt wrong. And because I remember you, Miss Carter. I remember how frightened you were." "Did you give them anything?" "I stalled, claimed computer problems. But they'll be back with court orders or federal warrants. Whatever you're running from, it knows exactly where to find you now." The line went dead as Naomi's world tilted sideways. Carter didn't just know about the triplets. He had access to their exact gestational age, their due date, and their current development status. Information that would let him calculate precisely when she'd be most vulnerable. Her phone immediately buzzed with a text from his number. Asterisk, your triplets will be mine too. Delivery date, January 15th. Don't make this harder than necessary. Asterisk. Vision blurring from more than pregnancy hormones, Naomi gripped the door handle as Miami's morning heat pressed against the car windows like a living thing. She was out of time, out of options, and carrying 3 more lives that would make escape impossible. The endgame had begun. You're bleeding. Alessandro's voice cut through the Miami penthouse's filtered silence as Naomi stepped from the private elevator, Marcus flanking her with military precision. The twins clung to her sides, their wide eyes taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed the glittering city below. Naomi touched her lip where she'd bitten it during the car ride, tasting copper. Stress will do that. So will carrying triplets while running from assassins. Alessandro moved with predatory grace across Italian marble floors, his expensive suit replaced by dark jeans and a white shirt that made his mixed heritage more pronounced, Korean cheekbones sharp beneath Italian eyes. When did you last see a doctor? Boston. Before your people and my father's people decided to redecorate the warehouse. The penthouse stretched around them like a fortress of glass and steel, 30 floors above Miami's chaos. Security cameras tracked every angle, bulletproof windows filtered the afternoon sun, and the subtle hum of electronic countermeasures promised privacy from surveillance. Hungry, Kemi announced, tugging on Naomi's worn jeans. Kitchen stocked, Alessandro said quietly. Marcus knows where everything is. As Marcus led the twins away, their small voices echoing through the cavernous space, Alessandro and Naomi faced each other across an expanse of neutral territory that felt more dangerous than any battlefield. This doesn't make us allies, Naomi said.
No.
But it keeps you alive long enough to hate me properly. Despite everything, she almost smiled. You're assuming I don't already. You're here. That suggests pragmatism over pure hatred. Alessandro moved to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the Miami skyline. Carter's offering $100 million now. The price doubled overnight. For all 5 children? Just the triplets. Apparently unborn heirs are worth more than walking ones. The casual brutality of the statement, their unborn children reduced to market commodities, made Naomi's hands shake with more than pregnancy hormones. He can't collect what he can't find. He found your medical records. He knows your due date. He knows triplet pregnancies rarely go to term. Alessandro turned back to her, his expression carefully neutral. January means you'll be vulnerable by November. That's 6 weeks. The math hit like a physical blow. 6 weeks to find safety, secure resources, and somehow protect 5 children while her body prepared to bring 3 more lives into this nightmare. I won't run forever pregnant, she admitted. Then we end this before you have to.
We.
Alessandro's mask slipped slightly, revealing something raw beneath the careful control. Those are my children you're carrying. My bloodline. Korean tradition demands I protect what's mine. Italian honor demands I correct my failures. Pretty words don't erase. Attempted murder. Yes, you've mentioned that. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion shadowing his features. But words backed by actions might mean something. What actions? Carter dies. His organization crumbles. The threat disappears. And then what? You raise 5 children in your world of bullets and blood money. The question hung between them like a challenge. Alessandro was quiet for long moments, watching his reflection overlap hers in the bulletproof glass. I grew up in that world, he said finally. Korean mother, Italian father, both dead before I turned 12. You know what I learned? That violence solves everything? That love is the most dangerous weakness, and the only thing worth protecting. Before Naomi could respond, her vision blurred. The familiar dizziness of pregnancy complicated by stress sent her reaching for the nearest support, Alessandro's arm, solid and steady beneath expensive fabric. When did you last eat? He asked. This morning, I think.
Sit down. Now.
He guided her to an oversized chair that probably cost more than most people's cars, then disappeared into the kitchen. She could hear him speaking quietly to Marcus, the low rumble of male voices mixing with the twins' excited chatter over what sounded like a substantial meal. Alessandro returned with a plate of fresh fruit, Korean rice crackers, and tea that smelled like jasmine and memories. "Eat," he ordered, settling into the chair across from her. "Since when do Mafia kings serve afternoon snacks?" "Since those Mafia kings are responsible for malnourished pregnant women carrying their heirs." The blunt honesty surprised her into compliance. She bit into a strawberry and tasted sunshine, realizing how long it had been since she'd eaten anything fresh or nutritious. "Better? Don't make this about caring," she warned. "Why not? I do care. That's the problem." Alessandro leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her skin warm despite the air conditioning. "2 years ago in Milan, you challenged everything I believed about strength and weakness. You made me want things I'd never allowed myself to want." "Like what?" "Mornings without violence. Conversations that weren't negotiations. Children who'd never see their father covered in blood." The quiet vulnerability in his voice did dangerous things to her carefully maintained defenses. She remembered those stolen Milan moments, how he'd quoted Korean poetry while she sketched strangers, how he'd laughed at her terrible attempts at Italian pronunciation, how he'd traced her face with gentle fingers as if memorizing something precious. "You destroyed all of that when you chose my father's plan." "I chose wrong." Alessandro's admission carried the weight of genuine regret. "I was terrified of losing you to my enemies, so I made you disappear instead." Coward's logic. "You were protecting your operation. I was protecting myself from caring too much about someone I couldn't control." The honesty stung because it rang true. Naomi had seen the war between affection and suspicion in his eyes even during their most intimate moments, a man trained to view love as liability fighting against feelings too strong to deny. "And now I'm fighting a different war. Against myself. Against Carter. Against time." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window with restless energy. "I've spent 2 years building an empire on violence and control. But watching you walk away with my children made me realize what I'd actually built." Which was? A cage. Gilded and powerful, but still a cage. Alessandro pulled his phone from his pocket, scrolling through messages with practiced efficiency. "My counsel thinks you're a weakness. They want me to claim the children and eliminate the complications." "Meaning me." "Meaning you. But you're not following their advice. Because they're wrong. You're not my weakness." He looked up from the phone, his dark eyes meeting hers with startling directness. "You're my strength. You're the reason I remember what I'm fighting for instead of just what I'm fighting against." Heat flooded Naomi's chest, attraction she couldn't afford, trust she couldn't justify, hope she couldn't risk. 2 years of survival had taught her to suppress these feelings, but Alessandro's presence unraveled her careful emotional discipline. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "Everything about us is dangerous." He moved back to her chair, kneeling beside it, so their faces were level. This close, she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the careful control that never quite concealed the intensity beneath. "I made the worst decision of my life that day," she found herself saying. "Trusting him again when I should have run. But before I explain how it destroyed everything I'd built, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because you need to understand what desperation can make a mother do." Alessandro's hand covered hers on the chair arm, his touch warm and surprisingly gentle. "What decision?" "Agreeing to meet you. Agreeing to trust you. Agreeing to risk my children's lives on the possibility that you might have changed." "Have I changed?" Naomi studied his face, the sharp planes that had haunted her dreams, the eyes that could promise salvation or damnation with equal conviction. "I don't know yet." "Then let me show you." He disappeared again, returning with an artist's sketchpad and charcoal pencils. "You used to sketch everything. In Milan. Even me, when you thought I wasn't watching. You were always watching." Occupational hazard. But also personal preference. He settled back into his chair, posing with unconscious elegance. Draw me. That's not. Draw me as I am now. Not the memory from Milan. Not the monster from your nightmares. Just Alessandro, asking the mother of his children to see him clearly. Against every rational thought, Naomi picked up the charcoal. Her fingers remembered the familiar weight, the smooth glide across paper, the meditative focus that came with translating three-dimensional reality into lines and shadows. Alessandro sat perfectly still, letting her study his features with artistic intensity. She drew the sharp line of his nose, the careful set of his mouth, the way exhaustion and determination warred in his expression. "You're thinner," she observed, adding shadows beneath his cheekbones. 2 years of wondering if you were alive will do that. You could have looked harder. I did look. I looked everywhere. But you're better at disappearing than I am at finding. As she worked, the familiar rhythm of creation calmed some of the constant anxiety that had plagued her since the gala. Her body relaxed into the chair, her breathing deepened, and for the first time in weeks, she felt almost safe. "Why Korean poetry?" she asked suddenly. "My mother. Before she died, she'd recite it while she cooked. Said it kept our heritage alive even in America." "How did she die?" Alessandro's stillness shifted almost imperceptibly. "Car bomb. Meant for my father, but she was driving his car to the market. I was 10. Naomi's charcoal paused mid-stroke. "I'm sorry. She taught me that love requires protection, but protection requires strength. I learned the wrong lessons about what kind of strength mattered." "What kind does matter?" "The kind that admits mistakes. The kind that changes when change is necessary. The kind that puts family before empire." The sketch was taking shape, not the cold Mafia king from news photos, but a man carrying grief and regret and desperate hope. Naomi found herself softening lines, adding vulnerability to features that had always seemed carved from stone. "There," she said, turning the pad toward him. Alessandro studied his portrait with quiet intensity. In her charcoal rendering, he looked human, flawed and complex, and somehow more real than his carefully constructed public image. "Is this how you see me? It's how you could be, if you choose to be. And if I make that choice?" Before Naomi could answer, her phone exploded with urgent alerts. Doctor's appointments, medical warnings, prescription reminders, all the digital traces of a high-risk pregnancy that she'd tried to suppress while running. Alessandro read over her shoulder, his expression darkening with each notification. "When did you last have prenatal care?" "Chicago. Before everything went wrong." "Naomi, you're 19 weeks along with triplets. You need monitoring, medications, professional care. I can't risk hospital records." "You can't risk not having them." Alessandro was already moving, his phone pressed to his ear. "Dr. Martinez? I need you at the penthouse. Emergency prenatal consultation. 20 minutes. You can't just summon doctors." "I can when those doctors owe their medical licenses to my family's legal support." He ended the call, turning back to her with grim determination. "You're showing symptoms of preeclampsia. Dizziness, bleeding, protein in your urine based on what you described earlier." "How do you know about preeclampsia?" "Because I've been researching high-risk pregnancies since I found out about the triplets. Because I know triplet births are dangerous. Because I refuse to lose you or them to medical complications I could have prevented." The careful planning behind his knowledge, the research, the preparation, the genuine concern, did something to Naomi's defenses that all his pretty words couldn't accomplish. He wasn't just claiming the children, he was trying to understand what protecting them actually required. "Dr. Martinez is discreet," he continued. "She's treated my family for 15 years. She won't report anything to anyone. And if the preeclampsia is severe?" Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Then we deal with it. Together. Whatever it takes." As if summoned by their conversation, the private elevator chimed with an arrival. Dr. Elena Martinez emerged carrying a medical bag that looked like it could outfit a mobile surgical unit, a woman in her 50s with competent hands and eyes that had seen too much to be shocked by anything. "Alessandro. And you must be Naomi." She settled beside the chair, with professional efficiency. Let's see what we're dealing with. 20 minutes later, the diagnosis confirmed Alessandro's fears. Naomi's blood pressure was elevated, protein levels concerning, and the stress of constant flight was creating conditions that could kill both her and the triplets. Bed rest, Dr. Martinez said firmly. Real rest, not hiding in cars and cheap motels. Proper nutrition, prenatal vitamins, and monitoring every 48 hours. That's impossible, Naomi protested. The alternative is worse. The doctor's voice carried the authority of someone who delivered difficult news many times. Preeclampsia can progress to eclampsia rapidly in triplet pregnancies. Seizures, organ failure, death for mother and babies. Alessandro's face had gone pale beneath his olive complexion. What do you need?
Time.
Safety. Medical supervision. Dr. Martinez began packing her equipment. Keep her stress levels down, keep her horizontal as much as possible, and call me immediately if she develops headaches, vision changes, or upper abdominal pain. After the doctor left, Naomi sat in stunned silence while Alessandro paced like a caged predator. The twins had fallen asleep on the penthouse's massive couch, their small bodies finally relaxed in what felt like genuine safety. This changes things, Alessandro said finally. Changes them how? No more running. No more stress. No more fear. His voice carried deadly conviction. I end Carter's threat permanently. Tonight. You can't just watch me. Alessandro's phone rang with a call from an unknown number. He answered with cold professionalism. Moretti. Carter's voice filled the room through the speaker, smooth as poisoned honey. Good evening, Alessandro. I trust you're enjoying my daughter's company. I'm enjoying protecting my heirs from their grandfather's greed. Greed? This is business. 5 children, properly leveraged, could reshape the entire eastern seaboard's power structure. They're not commodities. Carter laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Everything is a commodity if you know its value. And I know theirs precisely. The line went dead. Within seconds, Alessandro's security team was flooding into the penthouse, weapons drawn, faces grim. Marcus appeared from the kitchen, the twins stirring sleepily as adult voices filled the space with urgent planning. He's moving tonight, Alessandro told his lieutenant. Full mobilization. Every asset. What about the women and children? Alessandro looked at Naomi, seeing the fear and determination warring in her expression. They stay here. Protected. Safe. I'm not helpless, Naomi said. You're pregnant with my heirs and showing signs of a potentially fatal medical condition. You are absolutely helpless until this ends. Before she could argue, the building's fire alarms began screaming. Gas leak simulation. Evacuation protocol in 30 seconds. Alessandro's security chief spoke into his earpiece, while flames erupted from the building's lower floors, controlled burns designed to force movement, not destruction. The fire alarm shrieked with artificial urgency as emergency lighting bathed the penthouse in hellish red. It's a trap, Marcus said, scooping up Taiwo while Kemi clung to Naomi's leg. Of course it's a trap. Alessandro's voice carried deadly calm as he helped Naomi to her feet. But staying means burning to death. Moving means facing Carter directly. Some choice. Naomi gasped, pregnancy, making even simple movement difficult. At least we choose the battlefield. They moved toward the private elevator as smoke began seeping through the ventilation system. Real smoke now, not just theatrical effects. Carter had planned this perfectly, forcing them into motion when Naomi needed rest most. The elevator descended through floors filled with carefully orchestrated chaos. Fake emergency personnel directed real evacuees toward exits that led nowhere safe. Alessandro's men flanked them with military precision, but Naomi could see the tension in their movements. Parking garage, Alessandro decided. Armored vehicles, controlled environment. But as the elevator doors opened onto the underground level, fluorescent lights revealed their worst nightmare. Carter stood between 2 black SUVs, flanked by a dozen armed men whose professional stance screamed military training. And in his arms he held Kemi. Hello, sweetheart, Carter said, his voice echoing off concrete walls. Miss me? Naomi's world tilted sideways. Her daughter looked impossibly small against Carter's expensive suit, those wide eyes that usually sparkled with curiosity now clouded with fear. Let her go. Alessandro's weapon appeared with fluid precision, his men following suit until the garage resembled a Mexican standoff with automatic weapons. Poor choice of words, Carter replied. I'm not letting anything go. I'm collecting what's mine. She's not yours, Naomi said, her voice cracking despite her efforts at control. 5 heirs to 2 criminal empires? They're worth more than Miami real estate. Carter's grip tightened on Kemi, who whimpered softly. Especially these triplets you're carrying. Unborn children have such potential. How did you get her? Magic trick. While you were playing house with your baby daddy, my people were being creative with building maintenance. Kemi wandered off during the evacuation. Curious little thing. Marcus stepped forward, Taiwo still strapped to his chest. Exchange. Me for the girl. Marcus, no, Naomi whispered. But Carter was already shaking his head. I need all 5 children. Complete set. More valuable that way. The triplets aren't born yet, Alessandro pointed out. Details. I'm patient. Carter began backing toward the exit ramp, his men moving with practiced coordination. But my patience has limits. Brooklyn Warehouse, Pier 47. 1 hour. Bring Naomi and the boy, or little Kemi learns what happens to disappointing investments. Before anyone could react, smoke grenades detonated throughout the garage. Vision disappeared in gray clouds that burned throat and eyes. Naomi heard Kemi crying, Carter shouting orders, vehicles starting with military efficiency. When the smoke cleared, they were gone. Alessandro stood frozen for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for rage to calcify into deadly purpose, then exploded into motion. Every asset.
Now.
Full war mobilization. The warehouse is a kill box, his lieutenant warned. Then we make it our kill box. Alessandro turned to Naomi, who was hyperventilating against a concrete pillar. You stay here. Medical supervision. Safe. Like hell. Naomi. That's my daughter. My baby girl. Stress was triggering contractions she couldn't ignore, sharp pains that doubled her over despite her fury. I won't hide while he hurts her. You're in premature labor. I'm in homicidal rage. There's a difference. Alessandro stared at her for long moments, seeing the woman who'd survived a staged assassination and 2 years of pursuit, who'd birthed twins alone and carried triplets through hell. Keeping her safe meant locking her away from the fight. Respecting her meant letting her choose. Modified plan, he decided. You come, but you stay in the perimeter vehicle. Medical support. Armor protection. First sign of complications, Marcus evacuates you to the hospital. Agreed. 20 minutes later, they approached Brooklyn's industrial waterfront in a convoy that looked like military invasion. 3 armored SUVs, 2 ambulances, and enough firepower to level city blocks. Alessandro rode in the lead vehicle, studying warehouse schematics on a tablet while Naomi tried to breathe through increasingly frequent contractions. Regular intervals, she admitted when he looked concerned. How regular? 8 minutes apart. Maybe 7. We're aborting. We're finishing this. Naomi gripped his hand with strength that surprised them both. Those are our children in there. All of them. Kemi, Taiwo, and these 3 who are fighting to be born. We end this tonight, or we spend the rest of our lives running. Pier 47 stretched into New York Harbor like a concrete finger pointing at nothing. The warehouse squatted at its end, 4 stories of brick and steel that had seen better decades, now serving as Carter's chosen battlefield. Alessandro's tactical team spread through the surrounding area with professional efficiency. Sniper positions, entry points, escape routes, all mapped and covered within minutes. But Carter had chosen well. The warehouse offered limited approach angles and multiple defensive positions. Thermal imaging shows 12 hostiles inside, reported Jean, Alessandro's tech specialist. Plus Carter and the girl. 2nd floor, northwest corner. Explosives? Negative. He wants the children alive. That's his weakness, Alessandro murmured, then spoke into his headset. All units, Priority 1, child safety. Priority 2, eliminate threats. Priority 3, take Carter alive if possible. Naomi watched the tactical preparations through bulletproof glass, her contractions now 6 minutes apart and getting stronger. In the seat beside her, Taiwo slept with the exhausted peace of a child who'd learned to find rest wherever possible. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone, she said suddenly. Have you ever felt that moment when everything you believed just shatters? Tell me you understand, because right now, I need to know I'm not the only one who's been this afraid. Alessandro touched her face with surprising gentleness. Every day since Milan. Every day I've wondered if caring about you would destroy everything I built. Has it? Only the parts that needed destroying. Before she could respond, gunfire erupted from the warehouse. Muzzle flashes lit the evening darkness like deadly fireworks as Carter's men opened fire on Alessandro's advancing teams. Contact, came the radio chatter. Multiple shooters, automatic weapons. Advancing on south entrance. Alessandro checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. Stay here. Medical team has orders to evacuate you at first sign of complications. Alessandro. I'm bringing our daughter home. All of them. He disappeared into the tactical chaos, leaving Naomi alone with her contractions and mounting terror. Through the armored glass, she watched him advance toward the warehouse with fluid precision, his team moving like extensions of his will. Inside the warehouse, Carter had arranged his final performance with theatrical attention to detail. Kemi sat in a corner of the second-floor office, her small hands bound but her spirit unbroken. She hummed the Korean lullaby Alessandro had sent, the melody echoing off concrete walls. Brave little thing, Carter observed, checking his watch. Just like her mother. That stubbornness runs in our family. She's scared, said Marcus, who knelt nearby with his hands zip-tied behind his back. Carter's men had taken him during the garage assault, completing the collection of leverage points. Fear builds character. Naomi learned that lesson young. You're insane. I'm practical. 5 children from 2 powerful bloodlines, raised properly, could control organized crime from Boston to Miami. Think bigger picture, Marcus. Explosions shook the building as Alessandro's teams breached multiple entrances simultaneously. Carter's defensive positions began falling with mathematical precision, professional soldiers overwhelming hired muscle through superior training and overwhelming firepower. Time to move, Carter decided, lifting Kemi despite her frightened protests. We're taking this conversation mobile. But as they reached the office door, it exploded inward. Alessandro appeared through the smoke and debris like an avenging angel, his expensive clothes torn and bloodied, but his movement steady and sure. Let her go. Or what? You'll shoot me while I'm holding your daughter. Carter laughed, pressing his weapon against Kemi's temple. Even you aren't that reckless. You're right. I'm not. The shot came from behind Carter, Jin's sniper rifle speaking with surgical precision through a window that no longer existed. The bullet took Carter's gun hand off at the wrist, sending his weapon spinning across concrete floors while he screamed in shock and agony. Alessandro caught Kemi as she fell, his strong arms gathering her against his chest while she sobbed with relief and terror. Daddy, she cried, though she'd never called him that before. I've got you, little one. You're safe now. But Carter, even wounded and defeated, had one final card to play. His remaining hand reached for the detonator strapped to his chest, not explosives, but a signal device that would summon backup teams positioned throughout the city. You think this ends here? Blood poured from his severed wrist as he backed toward the windows. I have resources you can't imagine. This is just the beginning. Before he could trigger the device, Marcus broke free of his restraints and tackled him. Both men went down hard, fighting for control of the detonator with desperate violence. Kemi, close your eyes, Alessandro ordered, then put 3 bullets into Carter's chest with clinical precision. Silence fell over the warehouse like a dropped curtain. Outside in the armored vehicle, Naomi's contractions suddenly intensified to unbearable levels. The stress of watching the assault, combined with her preeclampsia symptoms, had triggered full labor despite being only 23 weeks pregnant. Hospital. Now, she gasped to the medical team. But as the ambulance screamed through Brooklyn streets, her body made the decision for her. The first triplet, a girl with Alessandro's dark hair, arrived before they reached the hospital, delivered in the back of an ambulance by a paramedic who'd never handled triplet births. Dr. Martinez met them at the emergency entrance, having monitored the situation through Alessandro's security network. NICU, stat. Get those babies on respiratory support immediately. The second triplet, another girl, came during the elevator ride to the maternity floor. The third, a boy who would carry both bloodlines forward, waited until Naomi was properly positioned in a delivery suite that Alessandro's money had transformed into a mobile intensive care unit. Alessandro arrived as his son took his first breath, still covered in gun smoke and concrete dust, but moving with careful gentleness as he approached the incubator. "They're so small," he whispered. "But strong," Dr. Martinez assured him. "All 5 children are fighters, like their parents." 3 weeks later, Naomi sat in the penthouse's nursery, feeding the boy, whom they'd named Hero after Alessandro's mother, while his sisters slept in matching cribs nearby. The twins, Kemi and Taiwo, had adapted to big sister status with remarkable resilience, though Kemi occasionally woke from nightmares about the warehouse. Carter's assets are being liquidated, Alessandro reported, settling beside her with legal documents. His network collapsed completely once the leadership was eliminated. No more threats from that direction. And your counsel? Learning to accept new priorities. Alessandro's smile carried hard-won peace. Turns out 5 heirs make for excellent motivation to restructure family business practices. The triplets were thriving despite their premature arrival. Advanced medical care and unlimited resources had given them every advantage science could provide. But it was love that truly sustained them, the fierce protection of parents who'd fought through hell to keep them safe. "There's something else," Alessandro said carefully. "Something about Kemi." As if summoned by her name, their eldest daughter appeared in the nursery doorway, her expression unusually solemn for a child just past her 3rd birthday. "Mama," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, baby girl?" "I can see the bad people before they come. In my dreams. I saw Grandpa Carter before he took me. I saw the fire before it started." Kemi moved closer, her small hand reaching for her mother's face. "And I can see new bad people coming. Different ones. They want to hurt our family, too." Naomi exchanged glances with Alessandro over their daughter's head. If Kemi truly had some form of precognitive ability, whether genuine psychic gift or simply remarkable intuition, it would change everything about how they protected their growing family. "What kind of bad people?" Alessandro asked gently. "The ones who want to take Daddy's business away. They're angry he chose family over fighting." Kemi's eyes met his with unnerving directness. "But I won't let them surprise us. I'll keep watching. I'll keep all of us safe." The promise from such a small voice should have been touching. Instead, it sent chills through both parents as they realized their daughter might be inheriting more than just their criminal legacy. She might be developing abilities that would make her invaluable to people who collected human weapons. "The shadows are moving again, Mama," Kemi whispered, her innocent face serious with adult concerns. "But next time, they won't catch us by surprise. I'll be ready." As if responding to some invisible signal, all 3 newborns stirred simultaneously in their cribs, tiny hands reaching toward their big sister with unconscious coordination. 5 children, 2 powerful bloodlines, and at least one gift that could reshape the criminal underworld's balance of power. Alessandro pulled Naomi closer, their family complete, but their story far from finished. Outside the bulletproof windows, Miami glittered with promise and threat in equal measure, a city where their children would grow up straddling the line between legitimate business and ancestral darkness. "Next time?" Naomi asked quietly. "There's always a next time," Alessandro replied. "But we'll be ready." In her crib, baby Aria, named for her grandmother's love of music, opened eyes that seemed to see far more than any newborn should. Her gaze fixed on Kemi with apparent recognition, as if acknowledging some shared understanding that transcended normal sibling bonds. The dynasty was secure. The immediate threats had been eliminated. But as Kemi had warned, the shadows were already moving again, drawn by the scent of power and the promise of children who might inherit abilities worth more than entire criminal empires. The next war was coming, and this time they would have 5 reasons to win it.